Hello all, welcome to the Dothan Area Botanical Gardens online tutorial for Scarecrows in the Gardens 2023. In this tutorial, we'll cover the basics of scarecrow design and scarecrow construction, followed by a video demonstration. To begin with, we should cover the basics of what our Scarecrows in the Gardens event is. Scarecrows in the Gardens is an annual public art project and competition hosted by the Gardens every fall. Anyone can participate in the competition, including schools, businesses, social clubs, and individuals. Contestants design their scarecrows during the months of August and September, then install their creations in the gardens in late September. The scarecrows remain in the gardens for the month of October, during which they will be judged by a panel and appreciated by garden visitors. Every year, Scarecrows in the Gardens has a new theme. Submissions to the competition are judged based on their creativity and adherence to that theme. The theme for 2023 is A Play on Life Imitates Art, Scarecrows Imitate Art. Designers for the 2023 competitions are basing their scarecrows on paintings and statuary from history. Designers for this competition need to make sure that their scarecrows are able to survive the month of October. Scarecrows face two major threats over the course of the event: weather and visitors. The Botanical Gardens will not repair submissions. Repairs are left up to their creators. To make sure your scarecrows look their best, it's important to use durable materials. For instance, avoid using long, string-like accessories. Long tinsel, for instance, will tangle in the wind or break off and be strewn around the gardens. Silk plants may also lose leaves during strong winds. In previous years, silk plants featured in scarecrows would shed leaves that our staff continued to find for at least 6 months after the event had ended. To protect your scarecrow from visitors, make sure that it is well supported and all accessories are firmly attached. Try to avoid featuring long, thin, fragile elements on your scarecrow as they are easily broken. Most scarecrow designs at the Botanical Gardens use an internal structure called an armature. Armatures are commonly used during sculpture because they provide essential support to more decorative materials. Armatures can be made of any sturdy, form-keeping material, but many of the scarecrows featured at the Botanical Gardens use half-inch PVC pipes as their armature. PVC is an inexpensive, durable material that is easy to work with, which makes it an excellent choice for many scarecrow designs. The PVC armature provides another advantage as well. It makes scarecrows easy to display in the gardens. The PVC pipe in the legs of the scarecrow can easily be slotted over a piece of rebar driven into the ground. When mounted on rebar this way, scarecrows are highly resistant to wind. Of course, scarecrow designers are not required to use PVC in their design. Feel free to use any material you need as long as your armature of choice is durable and allows the scarecrow to be stabilized in the wind. Should you choose to build a PVC armature, there are a few things you will need. You'll need a length of half-inch PVC pipe, a way to cut your pipe, a PVC glue, and a few different types of joint. The joints you need will vary based on the posture you give your scarecrow. Have a look at the diagram shown here to get an idea of how to lay out the joints for your scarecrow. We have also included a table of measurements so you can easily choose what size of scarecrow you want to build. Once your scarecrow is assembled, you can begin gluing the pipes to the joints. Be sure you glue your scarecrow together in a well-ventilated area, as PVC glue fumes can be hazardous if allowed to accumulate in an enclosed space. Pay special attention to the hips and legs of your scarecrow. These joints must be glued, as your scarecrow will bend at the waist if they are not. Once your armature is completed, you can begin padding it. Padding materials put the meat on the bones of your armature, so to speak. Your scarecrow will not look right without some form of padding to help fill the armature out. Thankfully, you can use many things to pad your scarecrow. There is one thing you will need to keep in mind as you select your padding material. It must be waterproof. Bubble wrap, plastic bags, and empty plastic bottles are all great ways to add volume to your scarecrow's torso without adding much weight. You can also use these materials on the arms, in addition to another great material for the arms, pool noodles. Pool noodles are exactly the right size to slide over your armature and have a diameter that is close to that of an actual human arm. Whatever you do, avoid using stuffing materials like newspaper or straw. They will compact and lose their form in the rain and may leach colors into your scarecrow's clothing. Once your armature is built and your scarecrow is padded, you can begin fleshing out your scarecrow's personality with clothing. Clothing can come from anywhere, from an unused outfit in your own wardrobe or from a thrift store. Thrifting can be a fun, creative, and easy way to assemble your scarecrow's outfit. When choosing your scarecrow's clothes, avoid using 100% cotton clothing. Full cotton clothing can begin to degrade in the weather. Hybrid materials that incorporate some kind of polyester blend will often be more durable. You can easily use gloves to make your Scarecrow's hands. Simply pad out a glove and attach it to your armature. When selecting your gloves, try to use fabric or leather gloves. Thin surgical gloves are not durable enough to survive outdoors. You have a huge range of choice when selecting shoes for your Scarecrow. Be aware that if you use a standard PVC armature, you will need to put holes in the heels so the rebar can connect to the PVC through the shoe. Finally, let's talk about your Scarecrow's head and hair. This is the most important part of your Scarecrow. It is the first thing that people will look at when they see your Scarecrow, so it's extra critical that your Scarecrow's head looks right. To that end, you should avoid using pre-made foam mannequin heads. These rarely look right when used on a Scarecrow, and often look cheap, poorly done, or uncanny. Thankfully, Scarecrows are an abstract art, and you can use a huge variety of other materials instead, so long as they're vaguely head-shaped. Vases, pots, milk jugs, soda bottles, plastic gourds, and more all make excellent bases for your Scarecrow's head. Once you've chosen the base for the head, you can begin adding facial features. Depending on the style you're going for, you can simply paint the face directly onto the head, or you may choose to use a strong outdoor safe glue to attach objects to the head as a substitute for facial features. For instance, use round objects like bottle caps for the eyes, or long objects for the nose. The face has lots of room for creativity, so have fun with it. If you want to sculpt your Scarecrow's head, you can use epoxy clay or oven-baked clay to change the head's shape by adding pronounced cheekbones, for instance. Avoid self-drying clay, as it will soften when exposed to rain. The paints you choose for your Scarecrow are also important. Make sure that you use waterproof paints for outdoor use. Using the wrong paint will cause your Scarecrow's colors to run or fade before the event is over. Similarly, avoid using living plant material. It will almost certainly begin to rot within a week of going outside. When the time comes to put hair on your Scarecrow, you once again have many options. The important thing is to avoid using anything too finely textured. Wigs with hair-like texture may lose their volume or mat or tangle in the weather. Instead, try a hair alternative, like shredded plastic, shredded cloth, moss, raffia, or an old mop head. Once again, Scarecrows are an abstract art form, so you should focus more on providing a convincing suggestion of hair rather than trying to resemble the real thing. Now that you've learned the basics you need to build your own Scarecrow, let's look at how the Botanical Gardens team developed their Scarecrow. First, let's have a look at the armatures they're holding. These are standard DABG armatures. The armature on your left is a child-sized armature, while the one on the right is an adult-sized armature. This style of armature works well for holding most poses, but the team actually chose to create a custom armature for their Scarecrow. As you can see, we have designed a strange-looking armature for our Scarecrow. Our Scarecrow is modeled after Edward Munch's painting The Scream, in which the subject has a distinctly curved design. This detail would be lost if we used a standard armature, so we designed a custom armature instead. We pieced our design together off-camera, but the pieces still need to be glued together. Because the spine of our armature has so many points of articulation, we also glued all of the joints of the spine. The shoulder and arms were left unglued to make dressing easier. Once the armature has been glued, we can begin padding our Scarecrow. Our padding material of choice is bubble wrap because it's inexpensive and easy to apply, though we augmented the wraps with some bottles taped around the spine. The wrap is held in place with packing tape. After the torso has been padded, it's time to add the dress. We found this dress at a local thrift store for just over $5. It has a high percentage of polyester in its material, and it matches the design of the Scream almost perfectly. After the dress is on, it's time to glue and pad the arms in a process similar to that we used on the spine. We chose to use bubble wrap instead of pool noodles on our Scarecrow's arms because their unusual shape would have made pool noodles difficult to work with. Once everything is generally assembled, it's time to start making corrections to the padding. The dress revealed a lot of oddly shaped lumps left over in the padding, and we were able to mostly remedy those by adding more bubble wrap and tightening up the packing tape. We did have to remove one bottle from the center of the Scarecrow, as it was creating an otherwise unfixable lump. Now let's focus on the head and hands. We used a dried gourd for our Scarecrow's head because it had a similar shape to the head of the Scream. Off camera, I drilled a hole in the back of the head and sanded the gourd to provide a smooth finish, and mounted the head on a stand that I cobbled together out of PVC so it could easily dry. I then applied 2 coats of outdoor-friendly acrylic paints to get an even base color before finishing up with the facial features. I used Folk Art brand paints in 3 colors, yellow ochre, white, and black. Once the head was dry, I moved on to the hands. The hands depicted in the Scream are highly stylized, with long and alien-like fingers. This effect would be lost if I simply used gloves, so I instead chose to make a custom set of hands using some stiff wire, aluminum foil, and oven-baked clay. To make the hands, I simply bent the wire into a 3-fingered hand shape. I then padded the figure with aluminum foil, similar to the way we padded the Scarecrow itself with bubble wrap. Once the fingers were padded, I constructed a palm shape out of foil and packed everything together. The fingers were long and wiggled around a lot at this stage, so I strengthened them by wrapping painter's tape around the hand and between the fingers. Once the armature was complete, I rolled out some Sculpey oven-baked clay and began to coat the fingers with clay. When both hands were completed, I popped them into a 350-degree oven for 15 minutes to cure. Once they had cured and cooled, it was a simple matter to paint them. I painted the hands using the same paints that I used to paint the head. Now that our Scarecrow is completely assembled, it can be moved outdoors. We wanted to give our Scarecrow a few props from the original monk painting, so we built a fence and a boardwalk for the Scarecrow to stand on. The fence is constructed from 2x4 lumber, and it has been painted in a special way to make it look as though it were taken straight from Monk's painting. We gave the fence a two-tone paint job, with bright orange paint on the back to simulate backlighting, and a deep brown stain on the front to simulate shadows. Because the fence needs to stand on its own, we also attached a loop to the back of each upright post so the fence could be mounted on rebars, similar to the way our Scarecrows themselves are mounted. Once the fence was mounted, we could begin installing our boardwalk. The boardwalk was constructed from 2 pallets laid end to end, stained gray. After the stain had mostly dried, we gave it a few strokes of blue paint. The blue paint helped give our boardwalk a painterly appearance. Once the boardwalk was in place, we could add our Scarecrow. After deciding exactly where we wanted the Scarecrow's feet to go, we drilled 2 holes in the boardwalk. This would allow us to drive in rebar, which will both mount the Scarecrow and secure the boardwalk. Off camera, we added a flesh-colored piece of cloth to hide the bubble wrap around the Scarecrow's neck area. Once the cloth was in place, we attached the head. The 2 rebar in the feet were not enough to support our Scarecrow's head thanks to its extremely long spine, so we returned with the 3rd, taller rebar, attached it to the Scarecrow's padding, and hid it under the dress. After a few small adjustments to our Scarecrow's pose, we were finished. Thus concludes our Scarecrow demonstration. Thank you for watching, and happy building.